Hello, welcome to the Cisilion Beyond the Tech podcast. So I'm Matt Pennell, one of the sales managers here, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, one of Cisilien's long-standing salespeople, Georgia Taggart.
Hello.
And one of our most successful salespeople in their first year, Tom Crooks. So welcome, guys. I think today we're just going to have a bit of a chat about your careers, a little bit about Cisilion, you know, what you enjoy about working here, and maybe just some of the things you've picked up over the years, right?
Yep.
So let's start with your careers. So Georgia, talk to me about how you got into tech sales.
So I came from a very different background. I've got a business degree. I went into hospitality from that. And yeah, I've been at Cisilion for about 8 years now. And I got into it via recruitment, tech recruitment. Okay. So that was like one of my first jobs outside of hospitality. I was there not very long, and the best part about that for me was the sales element. So speaking with customers, trying to fill roles, trying to get jobs, etc. And the tech industry was really interesting for me. Obviously, it can be really lucrative and it's massive, booming industry. And I literally fell into it from there. I got headhunted and then joined Cisilion, 8 years ago now, which seems like a lifetime ago.
Shift, right? But I think that's a really good thing to talk about, right? And Tom, I will come to you in a second. But that recruitment background, I think we've had a couple of people here join and been really successful in transferring over. Yeah. And I think recruitment teaches you a lot of good sales behaviors, high activity, all that kind of stuff.
How to get hold of people, difficult times. Yeah.
Objection handling, people let you down a lot. So it's how do you manage that? But I think that's probably put you in a really good stead, right? When you're doing business. Yeah, thanks for that. And then Tom, talk us through yours.
Mine's slightly different, to be fair to that George's experience. Mine was more, I was in school, went through my GCSEs, and there was other avenues to explore then, but nothing that really sort of suited me. Things like university, things like that. I was never really an academic. You know what I mean? I was complete transparency. I was kicked out of school. Wasn't the best. Was working in a gym as like a fitness assistant. And knew I wanted to go into sales, just didn't really know what sort of type of sales I wanted to go into. Been in the game now for about coming up to a decade, so almost 10 years. Yeah. And kind of I went to my previous company and I was there for 7.5 years, took an apprenticeship. And I went there literally as interview experience, just saw it as a sales role, got offered the interview. And it was literally by chance that I took it. And then from then just fell into it. And it sort of built this amazing foundation for me into the world of sales. Like George said, very lucrative, really, really enjoyed it, loved everything about it. Building relationship with customers, understanding sales cycles, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But never look back, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, that's great though, mate, right? Because you turned what was a negative situation into something that's really positive. 100%. Right? And you're making a really good career for yourself. So it's really good that you were open about that. Now, obviously you're both at Cisilion. Yeah. Different approaches to how you got into tech sales, but what got you to Cisilion? We'll start with you, George, actually. What made you join Cisilion?
To be honest, it was because I was relatively new to tech. I'm not the most technical person. I'm a relationship person. I'm a people person. Yeah, exactly. And it was, at the time I was really lucky to work directly underneath our now sales director. Yeah. So he was one that interviewed me. And to be honest with you, it was the culture, obviously, it's great. We've got like gorgeous offices, we've got amazing, amazing facilities, etc. But it was the people, and I'd say it was the people. Like it was such a nice environment to work in. Everyone was really hardworking. Everyone was really supportive, and just like the level of expertise that we had here, I was like, okay, this is going to be an easy sell, right? You want to, if you're in a sales organization, you want to be selling like a good product. 100%. And that's kind of really what sold it to me initially.
That's a really good point.
Never really looked back.
So I do think the culture is really key, right? Again, I've been here 5 months and I've noticed that, and you've been here a year, and you can talk a bit about that as well. 100%. But I think for us, everything we do is built on trust, right? Customers trust us to deliver so that they can deliver for their businesses. And if you don't have the technical capabilities behind you to deliver what we're promising, that trust goes out the window, right? Yeah. So I think it's really key that you talked about that. But that also comes down to having a culture where people want to work hard, they want to do the right thing, And it is a client first mentality, isn't it? But we all like each other, right? Generally? We get on with each other. So that helps.
Yeah. I'd also say that the trust kind of works both ways, absolutely, with regards to our customers. But I'd also take emphasis on internally. Yeah. So, you know, this was like, yes, it was my first like tech sales role, but we're really treated like adults. Yep. So I've seen, you know, talk about culture, but I've seen the culture shift and evolve over the years. So I was here pre-COVID, and the culture was very much like everyone was in the office 5 days a week, as with majority of our clients and other organizations in the area. And that I've seen the culture shift. I've seen the way that everyone is working shift, and we've kind of been ahead of it the whole time. And I've felt trusted, you know, to kind of run my own business as I see fit. And that was always something that was, you know, from a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset, something that I always really wanted and looked for. You know, I didn't just want to be told, okay, do X, Y, and Z every day. Yeah, exactly. You start at 9, you finish at 5:30. And it's given me the freedom to do that. I've also received a lot of trust from the organization, you know, backwards. And in turn, you know, my clients have a lot of trust with me as well. Yeah,
it's really key. And I think that's probably one of the things that's kept you here as well.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You mentioned around treating like an adult.
Yeah.
Right? You're in sales, you know what you've got to do, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's something that I've noticed here. Like having a young family, treating us like an adult and not saying, right, you're not here at 9:01 or you've left at 5.
It's the worst.
You don't need that, right? And I think that's something that's personally kept me here.
Yeah.
But is that a similar experience?
Yeah, I can definitely talk on that, because I've got 2 young children. So I've gone off twice on maternity leave and was really supported, you know, pre, during and post, you know, maternity leave. I took off. My son was born 5 years ago. I had 9 months off during lockdown, which was amazing. Came back, was again, like treated like an adult. Very different way of working back then, because everyone was still on lockdown, working from home, etc. And then had my daughter about 18 months ago. So I took a year off then. And again, just, you know, being supported through that is definitely, you know, I couldn't go anywhere else and get the same thing. It's level. Been
and it
amazing.
Is important, right? Work is work, and work's obviously important, and building a career is really key. But I think one thing I've noticed at Cisilion is we very much appreciate that work-life balance.
Yeah,
like people have families, and I think that's what's going to keep people here as well. You know, you can work at places that don't appreciate that, and ultimately that will wear down on you.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's really key.
Yeah.
And then Tom, mate, you joined Cisilion a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And genuinely, you've had a fantastic first year, right? And I think you're somebody that a lot of people should look to emulate in that space. But what made you decide to join Cisilion, right? You were really successful at your last place.
Yeah.
You've been there for years. You know, what made you come?
I was at my previous place for it was like 7.5 years, coming up to 8 years, and I went through the entire program. I went through the apprenticeship program when I was 17 turning 18, went through the apprenticeship program. I was a junior account manager, senior account manager, and then kind of eventually unleashed into the sort of account director role. And I built this book from the ground up, which was great, was delivering a great number. So I reached a point, I think, where, you know, I started to kind of toy with the idea of other avenues that are out there. You know, I felt like I kind of got everything I wanted from it, which was, like I said before, a great foundation into the world of sales and tech sales. Came across Cisilion, had my first call with Jamie, who's obviously mine and George's senior sales manager. And like I said, just really, really, really bought into the culture, everything that Cisilion stood for. I loved it. I was kind of wanted to move away from that box shifting element and kind of look more towards the solution-based selling, which is exactly what Cisilion entails.
It's more exciting, right?
Exciting.
You're delivering things that are actually making a massive impact to the business. And of course, there's the transactional business, and that is important. Yeah. But it's exciting when you're delivering something for a customer and you know it's going to make a real difference.
100%. I love the idea of a full sort of sales cycle, like engaging with the vendor sponsors, engaging with procurement, engaging with pre-sales, engaging with everything in between, ultimately putting forward a solution that's ultimately going to benefit a business. And delivering the value as well in all of that. And obviously I really, really bought into everything, you know. So yeah, eventually took the plunge, you know, after 7.5 years now almost been here for almost a year. And it's going really, really well. But yeah, took the leap, and honestly, best thing I ever did. It was definitely the right move for me as far as the stage I was in my career and as far as professional growth is concerned. And yeah, couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Glad, mate. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Yeah.
So look, again, you guys have both been pretty successful and at different stages of your careers, right? If there's anybody listening, what advice would you each give to somebody starting out in sales? I'll start with you, Georgia.
Okay. I think ultimately it comes down to, you know, building your client base. And the only way that you're going to do that is through trust.
Yeah.
And I think often it's easy to forget what, like the trust element that's involved with your clients. So for example, with these, you know, especially like large transformational projects, but also, you know, even when it comes to like critical pieces of kit being delivered on time, you know, people's jobs are on the line. You know, the majority of customers do have incumbent suppliers because obviously they're you know, they're getting their stuff from somewhere, right?
Yep.
And it does take a big leap of faith sometimes for them to kind of like switch over to a new partner. And I think just not taking that lightly and understanding exactly what that involves from their end. You know, we're sales, right? You know, we've got targets, we've got our own motivations, but really understanding what that means to the client, I think is really key.
And I think that's an underrated point, right? Because I think if you focus only what's important to you as a salesperson, people will see through that and they won't want to work with you. So getting to know the individuals, what their objectives are, what their goals are, what they need to deliver. That's so important.
How it impacts their role, how it impacts their recruitment, you know, everything for them. So it's really about building that trust. And, you know, often the way to do that is to, you know, is to add value, you know, to understand exactly what their business challenges are before you can actually map, okay, can technology support your business strategy? Absolutely. You know, forget about what you're trying to sell them. It's all about where are you trying to go as a business and how can we support that journey? So I think, you know, building trust, it does take time. And I think you've really got to understand that, yes, there are some quick wins sometimes. Sometimes you can be lucky, right customer, right time. But it really is about, you know, adding value over time. You know, I've got customers that, you know, some of my first deals that I've opened 8 years ago, they're still my customers now. And, you know, that came from that, you know, and now we're talking about these amazing projects, amazing, like transformative pieces of work. And that doesn't usually, it doesn't come straight away. You know, you've got to build trust, you've got to add value, and you've got to listen. You know, you've got to understand exactly.
That's the key point, right? And I think building trust, you know, you're never going to pick up the phone and someone goes, yeah, come on, great.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting for you to call.
Here's a contract.
It's just not how it works. And a lot of the time it is the little things that all add up.
Yeah.
You know, being responsive, knowing they can rely on you at any time you need. And I think sales over the years, a lot of people give sales a bad name, but I think it's a really powerful job to be able to support our customers. Right? And you're only going to be doing that by listening. And understanding them. Yeah. And then Tom, what about you, mate?
I think from like a Sicilian perspective as well, is moving away. I think what's great about it is kind of more that sort of consultative approach, you know, and that's one thing that really, you know, stuck out to me is a lot of my accounts that I work with now, I've worked with them for 7, 8, 9 years. You know what I mean? They trust me. They trust me to get the job done. And I've really, really built a sort of strong relationship within that account across multiple stakeholders. You know, I think where it's kind of different is, you know, there's other suppliers, other resellers, other partners out there, and they kind of focus on that fast-paced, power-based selling. Whereas from, just to echo what sort of Georgia said, is, you know, you want to understand the customer's vision. You know, what's your goal? Where do you want to get to? How do you assist in getting you there? You know, kind of putting an arm around them in that sense, you know? You know, I think that's really, really important. We've got our customer experience center. You know, we invite customers up. We do strategy sessions, all different kinds of stuff. I don't know other suppliers out there that do that. You know, and I think that's a real sort of standout point. I think as well as when you're engaged in the verticals of, you know, legal, finance, insurance, right? Referenceability is massive. You know, it's not just about sell. You know, you talk about the sort of managed services arm, you know, the Cisco, Microsoft arm, you know, and our referenceability across all of those sectors. And it stands out. It holds a lot of weight. Absolutely. You know, and people buy from people at the end of the day. And I think that's really, really important to remember is the relationship side of it. You know, we're here in Heron Tower, right? Liverpool Street. You look out that window, you know, that's where our customer base is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's everything as far as sales is concerned, and you know, and what it embodies is right here. Do you know what I mean? It's
I think
perfect.
you touched on a really a good point as well, because obviously the question is like what you know, like thinking about like what, you know, what's going to help our customers, and one of just kind of touching on the trust element as well is that mapping solutions to the customer's vision. You know, it's in terms of what we can sell. Like we are vendor agnostic, so we are able to kind of put together a solution roadmap, a project roadmap, or even like a multi-vertical technical tech stack that encompasses various different vendors, various different solutions, various different architectures. And I think that's really key, because it's not just about selling.
There's so much out there, right?
And our jobs are made much easier by that.
Exactly that. And it does, right? Customers don't know where to go, right? So they have to rely on us to be able to point them in the right direction and build that up. You know, so that's a really good point.
I think as well, going back to your point, as a new salesperson, new into the role, right? My biggest piece of advice from joining Cisilion, you know, is get in the office, mate. You know, there is people here, right, who are the elite of the game, you know.
Yeah.
And when I first came into Cisilion, right, I thought I was going to smash it out of the park. Complete transparency. Honestly, I did, right? And I've come here.
You've not done badly, mate. Give yourself some credit.
I know that. I appreciate that. But I've come in here, right, and it was the most humbling experience in the most amazing way, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've got people in here who are really, really at the top of their game, right? And when you're in the office, for me anyway, it was, you know, you listen to people on the calls, right? I'm sort of like quite hyper aware, I guess, right? And I'm listening to people on the calls. I'm doing something, but I'll be listening. I think, oh, that sounds really good. Yeah. That sounds really good. I like that. And then you start to kind of put your own twist on it. You know,
absolutely.
And then you use that.
That's how everybody learns, right?
Yeah.
None of us walked into sales and knew what to ask, how to you know, articulate things. And I think you're completely right. I think the one thing I love about it here as well is, even though you've got these people who are at the top of their game, they've always got time to help and support.
Yeah.
Everybody wants each other to do well in a really healthy way. Obviously there's competition, right? We're salespeople. We tend to be competitive, but it's healthy and we want people to do well. So that's a really good point. And obviously coming into the office is key, but that's why we've got such an incredible space, because I think if you were coming in and it was depressing, you know, just, you know, not much of an atmosphere, no culture, not a nice place. I mean, you can look out here, it's pretty great. People wouldn't want to. So creating that hybrid environment where people want to come in, they feel like they can develop and learn, but also have the flexibility around family life, I think it's been a game changer.
And engage, like, you know, what you were saying in terms of starting out in sales, also about engaging the right people at the right time, you know, and it like, we've got such an incredible technical team. You know, I'm not technical, as I've said, as you know. But I don't need to be. You know, we've got an amazing support system here, and I think it makes, you know, it reassures customers, and we can wheel in the right people at the right time to put those solutions together for customers. And, you know, it's what kind of sets us apart, I think. Our people, our technical people, for sure.
They are exceptional.
They make my job so much easier.
Exactly that. So, well, look, thank you guys. We'll talk a bit more about the customers now, right? Because again, we've kind of led nicely onto that. But why is it important to put the customer at the center of the sales process? Tom.
I think from that perspective, right, I think it's very easy to sort of push a sell to somebody when there might not even be a requirement there. I think it's really, you know, and a lot of people, when they're starting off in sales, you know, you might have a certain sort of narrative or something you're trying to push. But it's really, really about understanding what the customer needs is, customers want is, you know, and like us going back to what I said earlier, is understanding how do we assist in getting you there, right? What's your sort of, your vision for the business, right? Whether that be surrounding the network, whether they have a transformation journey, right? You know, all of that kind of stuff. You know, and that always brings back to that sort of consultative approach that Cisilion holds. You get, and what Georgia said about getting the right people aligned, you know, putting together that sort of session, and how do we make that happen. You know,
I think that kind of goes back to the trust thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to if you don't understand your customer and you're trying to push something that you don't even know is going to help them, you lose that trust straight away.
100%.
Well, it's a simple thing. Why are you putting the customer at the center? Because it's about the customer. It's not about you at all. It's as simple as that. And when you put the customer first, that's a customer for life.
Yeah,
it is fact. Whether they want to buy a Switch one day, whether they're doing a Windows 11 upgrade the next day, it doesn't matter. You put them first. You put their needs first. They're not going to be afraid to refer you into their other colleagues for other departments. They're not going to be afraid to refer you outside of their own organization, because you're doing right by them. It is about the customer. Everything that we do here is about the customer.
Absolutely.
Our CEC is about the customer. Our technical skills, where we're upskilling, it's about the customer needs.
And that's why I think it's great about Cisilion as well. I think having the client experience center, I've not seen many other VARs that do it. I know vendors do it because they've got specific technologies, but for us, it's around creating a really personal experience for customers, right? And you guys have all had your clients in there. I think people come away from it genuinely feeling like we're listening.
Yeah.
They want to work with us because it's like, well, we've never seen someone do this.
It's about standing out from the crowd, mate. You know what I mean? It is. Like, these people we're speaking to, especially for me, who's not necessarily the infancy of my journey at Cisilion, but new business is massive, mate. Yeah. And it's about standing out from the crowd. The people we're speaking to, the CIOs, IT directors, head of ITs, whatever it might be, they're probably getting about 20, 30 calls a week. Do you know what I mean? It's about standing out from the crowd, and things like the customer experience center, thinking about the vertical that we're working in, understanding that, talking about the vertical, the referenceability in that space and the work that we're doing. It goes a million miles.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think if you can show that you genuinely have put your research in to understand the challenges that they have within those verticals, again, you're helping them and you're listening to them. So it's really key.
It's constantly about adding value. We've got the CC, but in terms of the events that we host as well, we like to get our customers together, which I know is also quite unique for us. I know that there's probably a couple of other people out there that do it, but don't just take it from us as salespeople or as an organization. Talk to the customers, and we have a lot of round tables where we'll invite vendors in, or we'll just invite customers to kind of speak openly about their experiences, and just trying to give the industry market information.
And that's really, again, that's important because, whilst we are delivering tens or hundreds of these different projects within the different streams a year, it's very often the first time that a customer is delivering that project internally. Yeah. So having people that they can talk to and bounce ideas off, catch things before they happen. What did you learn? What would you do differently? All of that kind of stuff is really key.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
Great. Thank you. And then when you guys are trying to build a long-standing relationship, what kind of things do you do? I know we've talked a bit about, putting them at the center, really understanding their needs, but what other things do you do to build those relationships?
Get in front of them.
Yeah.
100% get in front of them.
Yeah, face to face. Yeah.
Face to face. People buy from people. Go for a coffee. Go for a lunch. Go for a beer. Get them up to the customer experience center. All of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, people buy from people.
Absolutely.
Phone calls, Teams calls can only take you so far. And I completely appreciate people in those sort of roles. They're exceptionally busy. So you have to try and find the time and work around their sort of schedules. That's absolutely fine. But getting in front of them, I think, is absolutely paramount in all of that. Yeah. That to me, regardless of the calls, regardless of the Teams calls, all of that to me is when the foundation of a relationship starts. Is when you get in front of them and you find 100%. Common ground. And before you know it, you have common interests and things like that. And the relationship goes from there. And before you know it, like a lot of my customers, where I've brought them over from my previous to here, 7 years down the line, the relationship, the relationship's concrete, and it's not necessarily about buying into the business, it's about buying into the person.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Because I guess people have an expectation that businesses can deliver the technical capabilities, but they want to trust that if something goes wrong, you're going to help them.
Yeah.
That's, again, important.
Yeah.
How about you, Georgia?
I think I totally agree with everything you said. I think the only to add on as well on top of that is around not just being reactive, being proactive about things. So, ways that you can add value and kind of generate that consistent trust. We've all seen it whereby, a customer's renewal's coming up. Oh, now you want to get in touch with me. It doesn't work like that here. And you can't run your business like that.
Yeah.
You've got to be having those regular face-to-face, if possible, catch-ups with your customers to showcase to them, look, this is what we're seeing in the market. Like, let's bring value to you. There's some trials coming up. We'd love to optimize your Azure estate at the moment. We want to save you money. And just show that you're actually thinking about them and you're actually, doing stuff for them consistently as part of your client, as part of your client relationship.
And I think that proactiveness, that comes back to really understanding them. If you understand their strategy, if you understand their business, you're not just bringing things to them that aren't relevant.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, actually, based on what I know about you and what you're trying to achieve, this is what we're seeing. Right? And then all of a sudden you become, again, a much more valued part. You're part of the team. You're an extension of it. Right?
With all of my, with all of my top customers, I'm continuously having those account reviews. And then what I do, the information that they give, okay, what's next? What are the plans? What are the challenges? I'll take that internally and I'll get the heads of department to actually sit around and say, okay, how can we help? What can we offer them? What are we seeing that we can showcase and that we can deliver to help solve this problem that's coming up in 12, 18 months, 3 years time. Yeah. Let's get ahead of it. Let's be proactive.
Brilliant. And last question. Why do you think your customers specifically buy from you? Let's go with Georgia.
Tricky.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I don't know, but it's working. I think so. Number one, I'm always available. Yeah. Whether I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, okay, send me an email. These are my office hours. Yeah. Most of my customers WhatsApp me, they call me, and I will always take calls where I can, WhatsApps, text, whatever it is, outside of working hours. Well, that's
a good point. Businesses don't just run from 9 to 5, right?
Exactly.
There's global businesses. IT is constant, right? So, if you've got a customer calling you at 10 o'clock at night and you can't go, sorry, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Yeah. And they're panicking. Yeah. They need to know that you're there.
Exactly.
Right?
And exactly. So I'm really easy to get hold of in that sense. I'm not available 24/7, but I always get back. I always get back to my customers, and they know that they can get hold of me. And I think I'm very passionate about my clients' wants and needs. Yep. So if there's a problem or if there's a challenge or if there's an issue that they need resolving, they know that I'm going to go to bat for them internally, which gets me into trouble sometimes. But I've been in the business for eight plus years. I know who to go to, and I think you touched on it earlier that everyone's got a very open door policy. So they know if they come to me and they say, "Can you do X, Y, and Z?" They know that I'm going to get it done. Yeah. And that's with the help policy. Right? Yeah, reliable, I would say. And if I say I'm going to do something, if I say I'm going to fix something, I do it. Yeah. And it obviously that goes back to trust as well. I'm in the office. Going back to your point as well, I'm always available. The majority of my customers are based in London. Yeah. They obviously have global offices, etc. Yeah. I've got a couple up north, but they're predominantly in the area. So I get those regular FaceTime touch points. And I do think that whilst the way of the world has changed over the last 5-6 years due to COVID, people still do want that human interaction. I'm very personable, I like to think. Yeah. So people can, my clients can talk to me, they can tell me how it is, and I'm not going to take it offensively. They know I'm going to go to bat for them, and I'm going to solve things for them.
And that's key, right? Again, because things don't always go right. Yeah. In technology, we all know that. I don't think any company ever has got everything 100% all the time. No. But knowing if things do go wrong, that you're going to be there fighting their corner every step of the way is really, really important, right? Mm.
And there's different, all sorts of different, types of sellers. Everyone's got their own way of doing things, and I think that's what makes us. That is a really nice thing to have internally, and I think, there's some really technical sellers, there's some real relationship sellers. And for me, it's about relationship and it's consistently, having that kind of friendships with my customers as well.
That friendship piece is, I think, underrated as well, because whilst not everyone will call their customers friends, I think I've seen a lot of people at Cisilion are invited to weddings, things like that. Yeah. And it has kind of branched off from that business relationship to there are times where actually we enjoy spending time with our customers as well, right? You work with people every day. You're talking to them every day.
I work from their offices sometimes,
So you do become friends with them at times as well.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah. And then Tom, how about you, mate? Why do people buy from you?
I think for me, it's not too much, dissimilar from George's answer, to be fair. I think, reliability, proactivity is massive. But I also think when it hits the fan, right, and like George said, when you go to battle for your customer, and being that, for me and my account base and my clients, if something goes wrong, and at some point in the relationship or at some point, something will go wrong, I want to be the first number they're going to call. Say, Tom, this has happened, what are we going to do about it? And then I think that's when you sort of showcase real value as well, is when something happens and it's how you go about it and how you fix it. Yeah. I think customers really, really respect that, and, like George said as well, again, a lot of my clients are based here in and around Liverpool Street, London. Getting FaceTime with them. A few beers can take you a long way. Do you know what I mean? Or a little lunch or a little dinner or a coffee or anything like that. It all comes down to relationship, mate. That's what it all comes down to. But I think that's really, really, really important.
Yeah, I do think that often we win business as well. I've had it with a couple of people that said, we're looking for a new account director because we just can't get hold of our existing one. We can't get hold of them.
Which is crazy to me.
They don't reply, which is insane, right? But, again, it's about understanding that people's jobs are on the line, and, a lot of the stuff that we're doing is really critical, especially when it comes to like data, etc. So it's understanding that, and we're always available. People know they can pick up the phone. They don't have to send a really wordy, like 5-paragraph email to me. They can pick up the phone and speak to me like a human, speak to me normally. Georgia, can you help fix this kind of thing?
I think as well, it's really important. It's not necessarily just about the account director as well, who's looking after the account. It's about the pre-sales team that is aligned to the account, or the project managers and things like that, who are, also, if you're working on a project or things like that, who are firmly embedded in that account with you.
They are,
and it's not necessarily me that will pick up the phone. There might be someone else who they need to talk to.
And relationship.
It's a combination of, it's Team Cisilion, not just you. Do you know what I mean? I think that's
brilliant.
I think that's important as well.
And I do have one off-script slight question.
Oh God,
there's nothing bad, so don't worry. But if there's someone listening right now that's thinking about a change, and Cisilion crops up, what would you say to them?
I think just come in and meet the team and see it for yourself. It's really hard to get the culture, the vibe of somewhere on paper or on screen, or however they're hearing about this. I think just come and have a chat. Everyone has, the managers, the senior sales, the junior sales, the technical people, everyone is open door policy. Everyone is more than happy to have a chat. And I think
very honest with it as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Everyone is super honest. And I think just come and have a chat, come and find out for yourself and understand exactly what it is we can offer.
Perfect. Brilliant.
Yeah.
You heard it here, guys, right? Come and have a chat. But look, thank you both for your time today. I think you've been really honest and provided some great insights. So thank you very much for coming and listening to the Cisilion Beyond the Tech podcast. You stay classy, San Diego.